You buy Italian loafers that were made in Milan. 2 days later, they get delivered to your front door. You order red snapper for dinner that was caught this morning, 1,000 miles away. Supply chain logistics makes all of this happen. It makes it affordable for consumers, profitable for companies in a global economy. I'm Rudy Leuschner with Rutgers Business School, and I'm excited to teach you about logistics. Logistics! I'm actually a professor of supply chain management, and we're talking about logistics.
Oh.
So what are you
UPS
doing here?
agent.
Every modern company, from Apple to Zappos, lives, thrives, or dies by their ability to match supply with demand. If you're considering a career in supply chain management, already working in the field, or are simply fascinated by how goods move around the globe, this course is for you. Here we see a truck carrying several cars. Oh man! Moving freight on the road. About a third of all strawberries in the United States come from one area, Watsonville, California. When you think about it, it's really far away from New Jersey, over 3,000 miles. Yet, when I walk down to my local grocery store and I look at the strawberries, what do I see? Yep, Watsonville. It says Watsonville right here. Now this is over 3,000 miles away from here. How do they get there? Well, a lot of it has to do with trucks. Lots and lots of trucks. And strawberries have to be refrigerated, so they better move fast. That is what we're going to talk about today. Motor freight and why it is so important. When we consider motor freight, it has several advantages. Speed, it's very fast. Reliability, trucks rarely break down, and if they do, it's only for a very short amount of time. 3, items do not get damaged very often. And 4th, trucks can pretty much get anywhere. There's a road, a truck can drive on it. And when we talk about the other modes of transportation, I want you to keep in mind these advantages that trucking has. Motor freight is also very efficient in a financial sense. Because the roadways are paid for by the government and ultimately the taxpayers, it's a subsidized industry. Most of the cost is in fuel, wages, maintenance, equipment, and user charges. Not all trucks are the same. We need city trucks, usually smaller vehicles that can make it inside of a congested city without a trailer. We load stuff in the back. Then we have line haul vehicles, and they come in different sizes. The most common ones are 40-foot containers that are used often for international shipments and intermodal. The other one is 53-foot containers, which are very popular in the United States and Canada. In addition, we have specialty vehicles such as refrigerated. Our strawberries have to come on those. Livestock containers, automobile carriers, and tankers. When we use different trucks, we connect them with terminals. Terminals are taking products from one truck, sorting them, and then moving them out on a different truck. We're not storing the items in these terminals, even though often they look like warehouses. There are 3 types of terminals. We have pickup and delivery terminals, where we go from a city truck to a line haul vehicle. Then we have cross docks, where we connect networks of transportation together. And finally, we have relay terminals, where we just switch out the cab and put a trailer on a new cab, so we have a fresh driver, and we move away. Motor carriers. Motor carriers are a huge industry in the United States and many other developed countries. In the US, about 2/3 of the freight is moved by truck. And there are over 2 million trucks on the road and over 5 million trailers. The majority of these companies are small businesses, sometimes owning just one truck. There are three basic forms of operation. The first one is truckload, or TL. And what that means is, as a shipper, you rent out the whole truck, whether you use it or not, and the truck goes from your origin to your destination directly. Another form is less than truckload, or LTL, in which you own a share of the truck for that shipment and you pay by weight. Now, that truck will not necessarily go from origin to destination. It will go through a network of terminals. And lastly, there's parcel freight, which is smaller shipments even than LTL, and it is much faster usually, but also much more expensive. Unfortunately, trucking is not a very profitable business because the major form of competition is over price. Everybody can get into the business fairly easily. Prices have come down in recent years, and there's just not that much money in it for people. Flying freight. This is the largest flower auction in the world. From here, flowers get sent all over the world. Once the flowers leave the flower auction in Amsterdam, they get here on a plane in less than 24 hours. So when I buy them at my local store, they're still fresh. There are several reasons why shippers are using air freight. The first and most important one is
speed. You can get it there as fast as possible.
Number two is capacity. You're able to ship a wide variety of products by plane. And the third one is accessibility. You can get to pretty much any destination, even by air. It's expensive, but when speed outweighs cost, air transportation is the way to go. Like trucking, this is a very competitive industry. It is hard to turn a profit because the biggest expense is fuel, and prices are tied to fuel costs. Therefore, no matter how high fuel is, you rarely turn a profit. Not all planes are the same, and we need different planes for different purposes. We have large all-cargo planes that are just used for freight. We have smaller narrow-body planes, and a lot of cargo actually gets moved on commercial airlines as belly cargo. Airports work similarly to motor freight terminals. Goods come in, usually on truck, then get loaded onto the planes and fly out. When they arrive at their destination, they land at the airport, planes get unloaded. You typically use drayage carriers, which are small motor freight carriers for short distances, and then they probably go on a truck towards their final destination. Air carriers. In the complex network between shippers, airports, air carriers, and customers, there are three basic types of operation. There are all cargo carriers where you get the whole plane and it flies from your origin to your destination. Then you can move cargo in the belly of commercial planes and use their network, or you can move cargo through commercial parcel carriers, which have their own planes and sometimes even their own airports. Rates in air transportation are a mystery to many. On paper, it looks simple. You get quoted the weight. However, weight must also correspond to a certain density. So for example, a 1 kilogram package must be no larger than 6,000 cubic centimeters. If it is heavier, you pay for the higher weight, but it's a smaller package. If it is bigger, you pay for the volume corresponding to a certain weight. So it's weight, but only if that weight is also a certain volume. Air carriers compete amongst two major lines. One is amongst fuel, which is their largest expense, and the better companies can use hedging to protect themselves against future price increases, the higher of a profit they can turn. The other one is delays added on by security delays, and the better companies can use technology to streamline that process, the better they will compete. containers on a train.
Intermodal means that we take a container and put it on a train, such as the one moving behind me. One of the most exciting concepts in transportation is intermodal. There we combine train and truck to use both modes most efficiently. We gain an advantage by using truck for pickup and delivery, and we get to use rail for the long haul, where it is much cheaper because rail is very fuel efficient and cost effective.
The speed advantage that truck has over short distances does not apply to long distances. Rail is not that much slower, but it is much cheaper, and we can then at the destination move onto another truck for final delivery. This form of intermodal transportation maximizes the advantages of one mode and minimizes the disadvantages of the other mode. So we use trucking where it is more efficient, we use rail where it's more efficient, and the whole transportation overall becomes cheaper and just as convenient as before. As a basic rule, whenever we use containerized freight, we can actually seamlessly transfer from one mode to another. Rail infrastructure is actually pretty exciting. Not only do you have rail yards where we have trucks driving in, we take the container, put them on a rail car directly, but we also have the trains themselves. And I actually spent all of 10 minutes learning how to drive a train. I broke the speed limit twice, so I'm not sure you want me driving your train, but I can do it. The other advantage that rail has is that we can use double stack containers to double the capacity of the train. So there's a lot of innovation even in rail, which is a very old form of transportation. Express delivery. There are three global giants that dominate the global transportation landscape. DHL, FedEx, and UPS are powerhouses when it comes to transportation. The way they make it work is they have local networks of terminals spread throughout the world.
We're here in front of a UPS terminal. As you see here, we have small pickup and delivery vehicles. They not only deliver products to local customers, but also pick up products from them. In the back of the building, here we see line haul vehicles right back there with 53-foot trailers behind them. They're used to move freight over long distances, connecting one terminal to the other. So what happens in a building like this?
What happens in a building,
Yeah.
I guess? Well, a lot. Everything. In the morning, see, when you come in, they do the unloading and
Yep.
then loading.
Okay.
So it's a really a large volume of packages goes out in within a few hours.
Awesome. I see all the trucks on the road
Yeah.
around 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they have
Awesome.
a lot of. I think we have 200 or 250 trucks going out, small trucks going out in the morning.
Wow.
What happens at those local terminals is goods come in from all over the world. They get consolidated and then sent to individual customers. They also receive items from local customers, sort them, and then ship them out all over the world. And the way that works is through different modes of transportation. We use air most often in these cases because a lot of the goods they ship are time sensitive. They also use motor freight because it's a ubiquitous mode and we use it all over the world. And finally, they started using intermodal rail because it is very cheap and not that much slower. To connect the whole network, we need different pieces of equipment. We need our local pickup and delivery vehicles, which most of you have seen on your streets. We need the local terminals. We need a global network of airplanes and airports that connect the different local terminals. And we need the ability to use other transportation providers when we do not have that capacity. And that is how these global giants make logistics happen all over the world. Why do companies need warehouses? So let's talk about warehouses. We need warehouses in a variety of different situations. One of them is to consolidate our raw material supply. So let's imagine a company that has 2 plants and 3 raw material suppliers. Now we could ship from those raw material suppliers directly into both of our plants and it will be fine. But there's a better way, and that is to use a warehouse in between them that receives raw materials from the 3 suppliers and then ships out assembled assortments as needed. Now this has several advantages. Number 1, efficiencies. And we can create efficiencies in transportation because we focus on each lane specifically and make it really good. We can achieve efficiencies in inventory because we can hold our inventory where it's needed and just as much as it's needed. And then finally, in production, because our production facilities get the resupplies they need when they need them. The other advantages are risk pooling. We hold inventory in just one location rather than scattered across this network of companies. And then finally, our service levels will be much higher than they would be otherwise. Even in more complex examples, warehouses still provide us with some benefits. Now let's look at the case where we have the same 2 plants and 5 different customers. You could ship out from those 2 plants to the 5 customers individually, but the customers want an assortment of products produced by both plants. So you instead should use 3 warehouses to consolidate your output from the 2 plants, create assortment, and then ship them out to your 5 final customers. This has the same advantages that we had before. It's more efficient, it reduces the risk, and it provides the customer with better service. Now let's review the 3 basic functions of warehousing. 1 is movement. Warehouses are meant to facilitate movement of products by receiving them, by transferring them across the warehouse, by picking them when they're needed, and by facilitating shipment. The second one is storage. You want to have an assortment of products in your warehouse available readily for when the customers want them. Now that storage may be shorter term or longer term in the case of less used items. And finally, information. Information about your inventory. When it's coming in, what you currently have, when it's going to go out.
There are different types of warehouses. To the left, we see a private warehouse, which a company built just for their products. They own it, they run it, and it only serves their business. To the right, we see a public warehouse where there are products for multiple companies and the shipping process is managed by a specialty warehousing company, sometimes also known as a third-party logistics company. They manage the warehousing and sometimes even the transportation process for their customer, the different shippers. You've seen what's outside of a warehouse, now let's take a look inside.
Now in order to understand what goes into a warehouse, we have to just review real quickly what makes a warehouse really good. And those are 3 things. Number 1, it's speed. Once the product is demanded by the customer, we want to be able to ship it out as quickly as possible. Number 2, quality. We don't want to send our customer the wrong item because that would really make them angry. And third, productivity. We want to recycle as much as possible, think about the environment. We want to reduce as much as possible, and we want to reuse as much as possible. Inside the warehouse, there are several things going on. We will move around products using forklifts, dollies, and carts, and we're going to use them to unload our trucks. We're going to use them to move products around the warehouse. And then finally, we're going to use them to load our trucks back up and ship the products out. Warehouses are full of racks and shelves because that's where we store the products in. Conveyors and sorters are where it gets really exciting. That's what we use to move the products about in the warehouse. Right before we get ready to ship out the products, we're going to assemble and package the orders. How should we design a warehouse?
This warehouse is massive, 1.5 million square feet, and they have tons of inventory for multiple brands in this location. But what makes a warehouse great is three things. The first of all is speed. You're able to ship out as much product as possible. The next one is redundancy. You have multiple checks built into your distribution system to ensure that the product that the customer asked for is actually the one that you delivered. And finally, productivity. Even though this is a massive warehouse, they're able to push out as much product as possible out of this huge distribution center.
When it comes to designing our warehouse, we have to consider our goals: speed, quality, and productivity. Now, we accomplish them by implementing a warehouse that has, number one, the shortest distances possible. And that is for all the products. But more importantly, the items that are selling the best must be located as close as possible to the shipping dock. Second, we want to maintain our quality. We don't want to ship out the wrong items, so we have to have redundancy built into the process. And then finally, we have to maintain as much throughput in our warehouse as possible by pushing out the items as quickly as possible. We start with unloading the product off of our trucks. Then we take the product, put it away into our storage location. That's going to sit in storage until the customer is asking for the item, and then we'll have a worker take it off the shelf, put it on a conveyor belt, moving to a sorting location, where finally the whole order, probably consisting of multiple products, is going to be assembled into a package. We're going to take all those packages, move them to the staging location in front of the dock door, where we then load our truck. This whole process is controlled by a warehouse management system, which is essentially a very big computer program that times all of these different steps. This was the flow process. Now let's visualize it in space. See the conveyor belt right going through the middle of the building? That then moves into the sorting area and the packaging area. And they pull from 3 different storage areas arranged by the importance of the items. Most important items, shortest distances. And then we assemble the orders close to the dock doors and move them out. How much inventory do we need? In this lecture, we're going to talk about inventory. And inventory is typically made up of 2 different pieces. One is cycle stock, the other one is safety stock. Now, cycle stock has to do with the inventory that goes up and down during regular sales and replenishment. Safety stock, we hold it just in case something we did not anticipate happens. So we don't really expect it to be used, but it's there if we need it. It's like an insurance policy. Let's look at an example. We are going to assume that we have a little company that sells 20 units per day, and every time they get a shipment, they get 200 units. And that's what we call cycle stock. So this cycles up and down as we get our replenishment. And because we get 200 at day 1, we have 0 at day 10, the average inventory that we have to hold is 100 units. The future is not always certain. That's why we cannot rely on cycle stock alone, and we need something called safety stock. Now, uncertainty can come in 2 forms. 1, our demand is not what we expected it to be. 2, our replenishment may not arrive when we want it to arrive. And for those reasons, we need to hold safety stock. One of the things that can happen is that demand is not always what we think it is. Let's assume our products are flying off the shelf, and rather than selling 20 units worth of product every day, we sell 25. What does that mean in detail? We still get our 200 units every 10 days. We also are selling 25 units per day. That means after 8 days, we have nothing left. For that reason, we hold safety stock. And how much safety stock do we need? 25 units per day over 2 days means 50 units worth of safety stock. Another case, the replenishment does not arrive when we expect it to arrive. So let's look at that. We get our 200 units worth of inventory. We expect it to last for 10 days, but the shipment does not arrive on day 10, it arrives on day 12. So what does that mean in terms of safety stock? We need to bridge 2 days with inventory. We sell 20 units a day. We need 40 units of safety stock. And that is why our inventory is much higher than before. Now let's put both cases together. This is where stuff really goes crazy. We sell 25 units per day and our replenishment arrive late. That means 4 days without inventory. And we need to hold safety stock to bridge those 4 days. With 25 per day, that means we need 100 units worth of safety stock. See, our average inventory just went up from 100 before without any uncertainty to 200. And inventory is pretty expensive. When to order inventory. In the previous lecture, we assumed that we would just order 200 units worth of inventory. Now in practice, it's not quite as simple. Most companies are scrutinizing that decision very heavily, and there are numerous, really thousands of approaches of how you can determine how much inventory to order each time. I will review 2 methods, the SQ method and the SS method. Open up any inventory textbook and you'll see those 2 popular methods, the SQ system and the SS system. Now, the little s stands for reorder point. In other words, when are you going to trigger an order? The second letter, the Q, stands for a fixed quantity that is determined ahead of time, and the S stands for a variable quantity that depends on the current inventory level as you place the order. The SQ system is a continuous review method where we monitor our inventory at all times, and then once we hit the reorder point, we place an order of the same quantity. In the SS system, it's also a continuous review system. However, when we place an order, we are going to place it dependent on where we are currently in the inventory. So if we have a lower inventory, the order will be larger because we order up to a certain level. So the order will be the difference between our current inventory and where we would like to be. Now let's review advantages and disadvantages of both. Advantages of the SQ system is that it's simple, it's very predictable for our supplier. However, in certain cases, it may not be as precise and efficient. The SS method may make it harder for a supplier, but it is a very precise system of inventory. No matter if you're selling strawberries, flowers, microchips, cars, or cats, inventory is a critical piece of your business. Knowing when to order inventory, knowing how much to order, is a critically important decision for your business. No matter which method you choose, either way, you have to pick the right method in your situation. Facilities. How many and where? When you build your logistics network, you have to determine how many facilities do you need, such as warehouses, terminals, and so on, and where to locate them. That is a very important decision. And how to pick the right locations is really an art form because you don't know what your needs are going to be in the future. Nevertheless, good planning pays off. So when we look at our logistics network, we have to make the decision. Do we have one warehouse, 2, 3, 4, or several dozens like some big companies do? When you have fewer warehouses, the advantages are that you locate your inventory in fewer locations, you pool your risk, and therefore are able to hold less inventory. When you have many facilities, you will carry more inventory, but your access to your customer is going to be much quicker. So the decision is a trade-off. Do you want to save money building facilities and holding inventory, or do you want quicker access to your customers? I mentioned risk. The thing about inventory is that if it is in fewer locations, you need less of it. And that has to do with the safety stock. Because you can spread your safety stock over a larger area, the risk of stocking out is less with fewer locations. If you have more locations, each location needs their own safety stock, thus we have more safety stock overall in the system. After you determine how many warehouses to build, you have to determine where to locate them. And you typically follow a center of gravity approach that puts you as close to the customer as possible. But you also have to consider that you do not stock every item in every warehouse, because some items may be needed in certain locales, such as in the north, we need more winter coats than we do in the desert. Another interesting way to think about it is that you can use your transportation network as a storage device. For example, car makers sometimes put several weeks worth of inventory into trains and rail yards before they get to the dealers. That gives them a storage option, even though it is transportation per se. Factors influencing logistics networks. When you build your logistics network, you trade off two important factors. The one is cost, the other one is service. If we want better service to our customers, we probably have to spend more money. But logistics networks are already expensive, so most companies try to reduce those costs as much as possible while still maintaining a high level of service. The cheapest logistics network looks different from the most expensive one. Nevertheless, the concept of cost versus service always applies. And you can have a logistics network with only one warehouse and overnight transportation, which will give you great service, but it will be very expensive. Or you can be like Amazon and have top customer service, 2-hour deliveries in some cases, but you need over 100 warehouses for that. Nevertheless, you have to pick the network that minimizes costs and gives you the best service possible.
We're in the middle of Amish country, and Urban Outfitters, a major clothing retailer based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, decided to build their warehouse right here. The reason why this location was, and there goes a UPS truck. The reason why Urban Outfitters chose this location probably has to do with the proximity to their home office, their commitment to the local area, and the ability to distribute up and down the eastern seaboard right from here in Lancaster County. It also behooved them that land was much cheaper here than in other locations, and they were able to bring jobs to an economically distressed area.
Two major drivers affecting logistics network are the cost of money, interest rates, and the cost of fuel, driven by the cost of crude oil. The way they impact logistics network is as follows. When interest rates are high, the cost of holding inventory goes up because most of the money spent holding inventory is cash tied up that you could use otherwise. When fuel costs are going up, remember fuel costs are the single largest expense of most transportation, the overall cost of transportation goes up. So when transportation is expensive, you want to have less of it, Therefore, you need more warehouses. When you have to spend a lot of money holding inventory, you want fewer warehouses. So as you see, those two economic drivers that most companies do not have any control over impact how their logistics network should look. And it is important to anticipate where those factors are going to be in the future so your network is as up to date as possible. Nevertheless, you can make small adjustments by using rented warehouses and evolve it over time to make sure that your cost is as low as possible while delivering the best service possible. Striving for the best logistics customer service. The goal of your logistics network is to make sure your customers are happy. And you keep them happy by keeping your promises to them. So for example, if you tell your customer, you will buy a product from me and 2 days later it will be at your doorstep, you should make it happen. Now the way to make it happen is to make sure you have built a logistics network that can accomplish that. And that is not by accident. In order to provide your customers with that top logistics customer service, you can have no stockouts and you should have the lead time that you advertise. Two concepts I will discuss next. Lead time is one of the most important metrics in logistics. It's measured from the time of order submission to the time of order receipt. And we want it to be short as possible. But we also do not want it to vary at all because we cannot plan for variability. An example of that would be if you're shipping parts to a car manufacturer and that line is moving. If your part is delayed and they cannot build their cars, the cost of waiting for a part is astronomical. So you want to avoid any delays in your lead times as much as possible. An equally important metric is fill rate, which is defined as the percentage of orders that is shipped from inventory. Lead time will be affected by the fill rate because if you don't have the item in inventory, you will not be able to meet your aggressive lead time. Therefore, we need to maintain enough inventory to ensure our fill rate is as high as possible and we don't have any stockouts. Ultimately, the overall goal of logistics is to deliver the right product at the right price to the right customer at the right place at the right time in the right quantity in the right condition. Those are known as the 7 R's of logistics. Companies are striving to achieve the 7 R's, but there's a wrinkle. Not every item that they sell is equally important. So for example, we have different SKUs known as stock keeping units. And some sell a lot, others sell a lot less. In general, for most companies, there are few products that sell the most, also known as our A items. While we have B items and C items, and there are lots of them, they are not as critically important to our success because we don't make as much money on them. Our A items is where we need our best fill rate and our lowest lead time. And then on the other items, we can reduce costs while offering lower levels of service. And that is how most companies achieve low costs in logistics while maximizing their service levels when it matters.